Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending upon where you're joining us from. It's your girl, Marcy Thomas, and I am so pleased to be back with you for another episode of Live Well Sister. So please come on in the room, invite your friends to come on in the room. If you like a good glass of wine, go ahead and grab one. Well, maybe not if it's first thing in the morning, but if you like a good glass of wine, please go ahead and grab one and get ready for what's going to be a really wonderful conversation that I'm excited to get into. So much so that I've got mine. Y'all know I normally don't have one, so you never know what's going to happen. But anyway, I am so excited to have this wonderful young lady with us who's written a book that actually we are getting a sneak peek of, and that is Wine Pairing for the People. And our special guest is Cha McCoy. Now, she is an entrepreneur, educator, and event producer, and a certified sommelier with the Court of Master Sommeliers. She developed the Communion, which is a wine dinner series that offers an inviting, accessible approach to gathering and enjoying wine. This experience has inspired her to open her first brick and mortar store. Reading too fast. The Communion Wine and Spirits. The dinner series was profiled in Food and Wine, and Child was one of wine enthusiasts 40 under 40. She has also served as the head of beverages for the Charleston Wine and Food Festival. She was a sommelier at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Portugal, and so many other things. Passionate about education, she spends her spare time mentoring and teaching at her alma mater, Syracuse University, where she has served as an adjunct professor. And there are so many other things that we're going to get into about Cha. I don't want to spend the whole time reading her information. I want to actually get in and have this conversation. So please welcome to the stage, Cha McCoy. Welcome, Cha.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yes. It's such a pleasure to have you here. Because as I told you before we came on, I am breaking what I normally do. Had to get my glass.
Yes. I got mine too. Cheers.
Yeah.
Good sis.
Yes. I saw you had yours. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not going to have you drink alone. So welcome. And first of all, I want to congratulate you on Wine Pairing for the People, because it's not quite out to the world. So I feel special getting, an advanced sneak peek of the book, but I'm really excited for you. And I know other people are going to be excited when they get a chance to read it.
Yeah, I'm glad. It sounds like you're enjoying it. Literally, it's inspired you.
Yeah.
You're in the right time zone. You can have a glass. So I feel like
I can have a glass.
Yeah. Don't worry. You shouldn't feel bad about it. But
I'm okay. And you know what they always say, it's 5:00 somewhere. So it's okay.
It's okay. So I'm excited about the book release. I'm excited for being able to share the wine with my community. And that's Black women, that's Harlem, that's, everywhere that I feel that I personally connect with. Yes. And I feel like the book is definitely much an homage to like places that planted seeds in me as well.
Yes. And it's a beautiful book. We're going to get into it. There's some nice pictures of you and just the food and all of those different things. So I want to start at the beginning, though, because we don't see a lot of sommeliers that look like you, right? So just tell us a little bit about who you are, where you come from. What was it that led you to even want to go into this particular field of endeavor?
Yes. So I am from Harlem. And it was a decision that I made after moving to Italy.
Okay.
learned a lot about wine, not to become a sommelier. I was actually there studying international finance, doing my MBA, and I ended up being connected with wine casually or socially, and it's truly part of the lifestyle of living in Italy. I'm sure, I don't know if you visited, have you ever
I
been to
have.
Italy? Yeah, if anybody's listening and enjoyed their time in Italy will definitely know that having wine at 10 a.m. no one's going to
Yeah.
judge you. Like this is
Right.
that's definitely something that was part of the culture and that I picked up and enjoying it on my off time, when I'm not in class, etc. And I was like, okay, why is this something that we judge, or we have a different type, we have a lot more rules in America
Right.
about. And I felt connected to the culture the more I continued to learn about wine. So moving back to the US, I ended up getting a job right after I came back to the US at a wine shop called The Winery, still open on 116th and 8th Avenue, for those of you who know New York City well. And
Mm-hmm.
I continue to learn more. I ended up taking exams, and my general manager, he was a black man, or he's still there. He was from Cleveland, Ohio,
That's
and
where I'm from.
that's where you're from? Yeah.
Yes.
Shout out to Eric. Shout out to Cleveland. And he was like, yeah, he was in the like I say, the nightlife. That was
Right.
like the big thing in New York City. So that's what brought him to New York to work in nightlife, which brought him to alcohol, like spirits and wine, etc. And so he was telling me, like you say, put me on game on like
Right.
how the industry of like alcohol beverages work. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay. Now here I am. And I should state this by saying my background is actually in engineering. So I'm an
Wow.
engineer by trade. That's what I did before I went and did my MBA. So coming back with my MBA was not to go into the wine and spirits industry. It was for me to be able to truly go in the direction of, let's say, upper management within engineering.
Right.
Um, and fast forward, I continue to take exams that he put me on to. I continue to like study on my own, and I guess he recognized like, oh, you're really passionate about this, and
Yes.
I'm doing this now part time while I still did my full time job in engineering.
Wow.
Um, and eventually I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to go like all the way in and quit my job in engineering. And that's what I did. So I ended up taking the leap of faith and being very much risk adverse at that time.
Yes.
Years later, to be able to move to Portugal. And I should say, in between this time, a lot of those stories that you'll find in the book, we like saying in the description that this is also like very armchair travel, because
Yes.
it's my adventures as I travel to different wine regions and learn as I am learning about wine as well. So I'm like going to South Africa because I'm working at this wine shop, and I'm connected to the wineries through the wine shops that I'm like
Right.
through the wine shop, the producers that I'm selling at the shop. And so get to call them up and say, hey, I work at this wine shop in Harlem, and you're one of my favorite wines here from South Africa, and I'm coming to South Africa. Can I come link up
Wow.
with you? It really was very like, it was not like this path that was set for me. I literally had to like create my own path in the industry. And I think that even my peers in the industry and other folks, they seen that as like, anybody who knows my name or got to the point that I have a book, it's truly because I was like, okay, I don't know what y'all doing. And I didn't get here because y'all let me in. I'm creating my own, statement here in the industry. And so that fast forward, like I said, went to Portugal, worked at a Michelin star restaurant there. Pandemic happened, returned home, actually ended up opening my first brick and mortar. And that was the wine shop you mentioned up in Syracuse while teaching as an adjunct professor there. And yeah, got in the meantime doing other things like consulting for festivals and finishing this book. So yeah, that's the whole story, I guess, as quickly as I could possibly
I
say it.
love that though. And you see, I'm smiling because I have read the book. So some of these things I know. So this is for everyone else to get an introduction to you. And
Yeah.
again, I will mention that the book comes out on November 4th. So we always know that pre-orders are great. So hopefully this conversation will inspire you to go ahead and grab copies of the book, because I'm thinking your timing for having it come out is perfect, because I mean, I know we drink wine all the time, but as people go into the holidays, a lot of times they're, looking for ways to celebrate and what goes with what and all that. So we're going to get into that. But I do just I'm sure you saw the movie Uncorked.
Yes, on Netflix. Yes,
on Netflix. So we watched that young man, fictional person in that film go through the whole process. But you are a Black woman, versus a Black male and a real person. So what from that did you feel was like similar to your experience, or was it very different?
Yeah, I would think, and we should also say for those who haven't seen it, not only was he, I guess, male, he's also based in like Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken, because his father owned a barbecue place. That's all I remember. So I feel like it was like it's given Memphis or something, or Texas. Right. So I feel like there's a lot to say about the like where he's at versus being in New York.
Right.
So there is this opportunity to learn a lot about wine from going to tastings often, which you do see in the movie.
Yeah,
I would say for the amount that you can find in like a state like Tennessee is probably, I don't know how many more happen in New York City.
New York,
there's this access. You just need to get invited in the room or figure out how to get in the room, let's just say, right?
Right.
You may not be invited, but you got to be a little savvy in New York, because there's always a way to be introduced to the wine. So there's moments where he's going to tastings. I think going to training and going to school, which is a big part of the movie too, is him kind of creating a community amongst his classmates who are also studying for the exam, for the sommelier exam. That's important. So finding a community, whether it's at work, may not be your peers at work, it may be someone else, and you create a tasting group. You see him like training his palate at home or with his tasting group. So all of that is very much, they did have the sommelier, Dylan Proctor, who is also one of the key figures in the Somm documentary called Somm, SOMM. And that's an important one. A lot of people, I would say, also inspired me. Like once I was from the wine shop, moving into like, oh, I'm actually interested in this, and happy to find that a documentary about the journey was out there. So if anybody is interested, I would say go back. The very first one is, they have now 3 movies that's about the Somm journey and following actual Somms. And Dylan Proctor is one of the Somms that they follow. So, and the reason I bring him up is because he, if I'm not mistaken, was part of that movie, like helped make sure that it was close to what we go through. He had the fortunate, access to a restaurant already, which most Somms, your father don't own a restaurant. So that was something I thought was pretty cool. That that clearly not my story, but something I thought was very interesting and could help. But very much similar to the book. It's kind of like he was focused. His father had a like smoking meats, and the context of where wines, like where do the wine industry or tasting wine connect with something that we're not usually taught about, like smoked meats is not usually in the vocabulary or in your lessons when you're learning how to become a somm. So you got to kind of take your knowledge, the base knowledge that you received already, and then kind of apply it to your own culture, where others don't really have to do it, because if you are from a certain culture, it's kind of part of the teaching. So that's what this book is also kind of answering, like just giving everybody permission to see themselves in the wine industry. I hope people do feel that. It's not supposed to be the end all be all and every pairing on West African cuisine. This is to let people who have restaurants that may be focused on West African cuisine or barbecue or etc. That I think that you should have a really good wine list though. But we're usually like, oh no, we don't care. We just want a red and the white or whatever.
House wine.
House wine, and that's it, because this is a Jamaican restaurant. I'm like, no, you should have just, you should have a thoughtfully curated wine list in your restaurant as well. And so I think that what he was proposing to his father, for example, in that show, I think that was pretty cool. Like, like how can we think about how I guess, hickory and a different type of woods that he's using for smoking the meats. And the same thing with what barrels you choose to age the wine in is the same
Mm-hmm.
thing. Maybe everyone sees a barrel and they just think it's all the same, but there are barrels that are from France, Hungary, American, that we do talk about certain nuances that comes from the different wood types when you are actually are aging wine in them. So that's very much, it was something that maybe if you're not in the wine industry, you don't recognize that even that is unique for us as wine professionals who are studying wood species.
Yeah.
That's also a part of our training, is to know kind of that you're going to get vanilla on this, more cinnamon on this one. And we're talking about wood. We're not even talking about what grape you use or what region, just the use of the wood
Just the
itself.
wood in and of itself.
Yeah, the
Wow.
barrels. Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Wood
that's so good.
barrels, I should say. Yeah.
One of the things that I was thinking about, and kind of like what you just said, I'm sorry, some people are probably like, whoa, that's way over their head.
Okay, yeah,
But
bring
when
it
I
back.
was reading the book, for me, it's like, oftentimes, like I'll talk to my mom, say, well, you know that like food and cooking well is science. So,
Mm.
like when reading this book and thinking about pairing food and wine, that really is a science. To know that, okay, if I used, a certain type of spice, that a certain type of wine will go good with it. But they would pair well with it because they have, either complementary or similar patterns within them. So there's definitely a science to figuring that out. So
Yeah.
makes
I
sense
mean,
you
I
as an
like getting
engineer.
people. Yeah, well, after you study physics and all
Right.
this other kind of craziness, everything's like now you just got to break everything down and make it simple for yourself to understand. And then trust me, studying engineering, you may be the first person who connected the two. Everyone thinks that, oh, like engineering has nothing to do with this stuff. So how does the world connect? But I think it's about how my brain works, right?
Your
If
brain
you
works.
the longer the
Exactly.
math problem, the crazier the type of project that I'm doing is like, how do I break it down to the most simplest points? And when I thought about wine pairings and how to explain it, I kept saying like, well, how am I going to teach people? And in the beginning of the book, we do talk about
Mm-hmm.
the, in the simplest way, is that this book is not supposed to be the training guide, but more
Right.
or less for you to switch your mindset on when you are pairing. The act of pairing is literally having a dish with a beverage at the same time, which I feel like in my culture growing up, I'm African American, like I said, born in Harlem, third generation. I like reminding people my grandfather was born here. Um, a lot of us are drinking Coca-Cola with everything,
Right.
we're so accustomed because we like that drink that we're
Mm.
not actually pairing. We're literally just enjoying the beverage, which is no
Right.
problem at all.
Right.
Or even for people who want to judge folks who love Moscato, which I'm sure you saw there were some pairings for Moscato throughout the
Right.
book too.
Right. Well,
I
it's
think
just
they're
sweet.
great.
You don't have to just drink sweet all the time, but if they don't understand pairing, they
Right.
might.
So I never shame anybody for who like
Right.
Moscato. The whole point is that I want to have it. They probably like, oh, you're a sommelier. You probably don't drink Moscato. I would with the right paired dish. I just won't just drink Moscato with anything with roast chicken. So I do feel like there is something about that's I'm very intentional about everything. So my wine and food pairings or wine, or I should say food and beverage pairing, even if it's non-alcoholic, tea, anything that I'm having is going to be like, what do I want to do? Do I want to pair this dish or do I just want to have a separate experience? Like I just
Mhm.
want to have a sweet wine because I enjoy the sweet wine, like a Moscato, or do I want to have something that is actually going to do well together? And I feel like we just don't have that experience as much. But you do see that regionally with places that are wine countries. So while I'm in Italy, they're obviously making dishes that are super regional.
Mhm.
And so therefore the wines they make in that region, or they don't even know they're doing it. There is inherited. The wines they
Mhm.
selected is made by a producer who's probably from that region, in
Right.
their wife or husband or mother is making dishes that are pair well with the food, with that they're actually, so their palate is already adjusted. They're actually picking wines and making wines that go well with the food they're eating. So for them, that what grows together goes together makes complete sense. But
Right.
if you're from Senegal are you thinking about what grows together goes together? Not so
Right.
much. We kind of need another way of thinking. And so you just need to choose if you want a wine and dish pairing that's going to be a contrast, or do you want it to be a complement? I think that's the easiest and the simplest way to think. Do you want something to be with, go together, or do you want something that's going to be kind of unique blend of flavors where this one is, sweet, and so you want something more savory to go with it, or do so there is like a balance of the experience that you get to choose as obviously the diner, the one
Right.
who's in the dish.
You definitely get to choose. Right. Because I know sometimes, certain restaurants you go to, they will like give you a list based upon, what it is that you are, going to be eating, or the person that is coming to the table might recommend and things
Yep.
like that. But I really leaned in, and I told you beforehand, because my audience is predominantly Black people. Not that we don't eat widely, because like I love good Mexican food, I love Asian
Yeah,
food,
we
I love
do.
other flavors, but there are certain things that we culturally tend to eat, a lot, or a part of our culture, and just figuring out what goes well with that. So, well, just so y'all know, I'm drinking a Pinot Noir right now, and it's because you say that that's what a down for whatever wine.
Down for whatever. Sometimes you just need the ones that's going to go with everything.
Right.
I call them the party pleasers, right? Is you don't know who's in the room. Right now, we're thinking about Thanksgiving pairings. So it comes up a lot, that Pinot Noir and Gamay. These are like grapes that you would hear Psalms like repeat all the times, because they really do go well with a multiple amount of flavors. So if someone is making, that ham, and also turkey, and also mac and cheese, and
Right.
you're eating all of that at the same time. Like in real life, most people are not going around eating like this all the time. Like, if
Right.
you're having a cuisine, things like, go more together. But some magic moment happens on Thanksgiving where we get to have all these flavors, cranberry sauce, which is super tart, on top of something that's super savory like mac and cheese, with all the, richness of that. And we're just putting it all together like it's a smorgasbord of flavors. And you want a wine that's not going to try to challenge. You want something that's going to be simpler, easier. Maybe it may bring a nice fruity note to, like, balance it. So Pinot Noir is just one of those ones that's just, and it's, you could tend to have ones that are like lighter, some that's more medium body and more fuller and rounder. So, knowing how you want the wine to show is important when you're having it for Thanksgiving. And the same thing with the ones that I put in there as well. Like, I love a Grenache, but I feel like after owning the store, I would say that's something I learned. Now it was cool to be able to have like consumer behavior. I feel like I have like a peek into insight on how people really choose wines, because I had the numbers in front of me where everybody's like, oh my God, I love Cab. And it's like, Cab did not sell as well as this, the varietal, right? So I have this peek, like this lens into people say one thing, but how are they actually buying, and that was pretty cool too, with having the shop, because there's some varietals that they probably would never, I don't know if they feel like some ones are popular, and so they just feel like, oh, I just love a good Cab, so they just say that. But is that how they purchasing, so that was fun to be able to, I'm one of those like deep researcher people who like love to get into the weeds of that type of information. So the down for whatever wines allow me to be able to truly be able to see, like, yeah, most people saying this, but they really buying that.
Right. Exactly. Because one of the things I don't see on here, because my mom and I always say put hair on your chest, is Merlot.
Interesting. Why? I usually think hair on your chest means high alcohol. So why you think?
I guess because for a lot of people, Merlot is like strong. I guess the taste of it might be a little stronger than some others. For some people,
I gotta come back and get y'all to learn more. Let's say love Merlot.
I love Merlot, but the first time I introduced it to my mom, she's like, "Woo!" Like, it was strong for her, but she's used to drinking other things that maybe are a little sweeter, those sorts of things. So if you're used to that, then it would make a difference when you go.
Yeah, I think the one note I would say about Merlot, because it does get a bad rap because of that movie, Sideways, when it came out. Like, the guy went frantic in that wine movie about like hating Merlot. So ever since then, it kind of like started trending down. But Merlot is a beautiful grape. And a lot of people love Bordeaux and don't realize that Merlot is a big portion plays a large role in Bordeaux reds. Yet people love them and they act like Merlot's not in it. And I'm like, you clearly love Merlot because it's in the wine that you. That's a great example of one of the ones where people are like, I hate Merlot, and then they're like buying up all the Bordeaux. I'm like, Merlot's like 65% of that wine you just purchased. But I'm not going to tell them. They're just going to keep enjoying it because they don't say it on the bottle. So I'm like, okay, let me just let them have a moment. But yeah, Merlot is not higher in alcohol. So that's why when you said the burn, I wanted to understand or clarify that, because usually that's a sensation people will get with like tequila. Like if you took a shot, like that's you get this burn in your chest. But so the Merlot has nothing to do with the alcohol. It just have more to do with what flavors or styles you would like. So more deep and dark fruit flavor, more rustic wine. So it just, do people like that flavor or not? That's
right. It's pretty much what it is.
Yeah. It's not so much. You can find some very like jammy, juicy ones, but I never want to put any varietal in a box. Like just because you found one in California that may have tastes like that doesn't mean the one in France is going to taste like that, or the one in Australia is going to taste like that. So, if you had a bad experience with a particular grape, I would say don't say no more Chardonnay ever. I would say that means maybe look for another region. Maybe you don't enjoy Chardonnays from California. Maybe you should have a Chardonnay from France. Maybe you should have a Chardonnay from South America. So that was a big portion of the book too, which, with, I think we're like over 100 wine and food pairings in the book. I think that it's very much, I did two things. I wanted people to really see that you can pair wine with all these dishes. So that's one, like I said, about giving people from different cultures permission to truly have a good wine paired with it. But secondly, I'm sure you've seen there was a lot of wines that maybe people don't even know, never even heard of.
Yes, a lot I never heard of.
And I feel like instead of just talking about Merlot, Pinot, and Chard all the time, maybe you thought there was no pairing because you're not thinking of other grapes like Castelao and Encruzado or Touriga Nacional, which are all Portuguese varietals that are not as popular as the French ones we just said. So I feel like maybe it's because we haven't discovered enough other wines, meaning personally discovered. You haven't had outside of your normal Cabernets, etc. You need to venture out a bit and kind of, for you, find a new grape maybe that you can fall in love with, that may be from a region you've never had wine from, as we feature in the book, Morocco, Turkey, wines from Georgia. And they're going to taste different because of terroir. So even if it is a Chardonnay made in those countries, or maybe a grape you never had at all that's from that country natively. And so this is a good perspective as a sommelier, is really about trying to, if you want to say, put people on and maybe something new.
Right. You just mentioned that word terroir, because in the book you really tap into that, because this book is not just talking about wine and food pairing. What I really love about it, Cha, is that I feel like I got to know you, number one. Number two,
shots for the people. So if the wine pairings got to be for the people, because shots for the people.
Yes, but it's got to be. I had the opportunity to also consider what it would be to visit some of these places and learn about, the atmosphere in those places, the environment in those places, maybe a little of the history of how people, even began to, do things agriculturally and things like that, because really wine is based on agriculture. You know what I mean?
1,000%.
And each place that you go is going to be different. Another thing that I really picked up on is, in a lot of cases, we're using the same ingredients, but it's how we put them together, or the spices that we add to them. So I found that really exciting. So, and in the book, you go through several different parts of the world, but you start with the motherland, because the motherland is the place to begin. Yeah. And so this beautiful picture of you here, I love that. Try to get the light right there. We go. It's a little bit better. But you start in Africa, and I just want to go through a little bit, because there's no way we're going to hit them all, and the point is to get people to buy the book, not for us to
That's right. We don't give them all the.
Not gonna give it all away, but you talk about Morocco, which you did mention a couple moments ago. But there's a chapter where you talk about Senegal, Ghana, and Nigeria. And in that particular portion of the chapter, you talk about jollof because there's been these jollof wars. People
Yes.
trying to say, well, whose jollof is the best? Is it the Nigerian? Is it the Ghanaian? Is it the Senegalese? So in that, you just tell us a little bit about your thoughts about jollof and the different ones. You don't tell us which one is your favorite. You
Yeah,
don't have,
okay. Yeah, because I don't want look, I
I don't
don't
want
want
to
no
be mad
fights.
at you.
I mean, I'm always like, I naturally can be, it doesn't make a difference. I don't represent any of these particular countries, but as someone from Harlem and Senegal is near and dear to my heart. Folks who probably don't know the last time you've been to Harlem, or if you know this about Harlem, but there is Petit Senegal, so Little Senegal is on 116th Street, and that is where the wine shop that I mentioned that I first started, I guess you would say, my wine career back in 2012 is where I got my start. So I became very much familiar with the dishes that was on the menu in the Senegalese restaurants because of that, whether it was like jollof rice as the base with all the dishes that I was ordering, or just the fact that some of our clients were in the store were folks who were actually partaking in dining at these restaurants because they are BYOB. And so with that being said, with them having such a Muslim influence, there is no alcohol being sold at those restaurants.
Right.
Again, things that I actually just learned from selling wine in a wine shop. This was, I didn't grow up knowing this. And when I was little, there was no Little Senegal there when I was growing up in Harlem. So it became that over time. And I just showed you the power of influence and even just the impact that West African has had in my neighborhood. So I end up always choosing Senegal because of that. But I would say that the idea of pairing them, going to a Nigerian restaurant, shout out to Native, for like Nigerian food that's in New York City as well. They like have a different style. The picture you so beautifully, that is a Senegalese restaurant in Brooklyn, and they Cafe Rudi. I did an event with them, and I had like a snippet of the menu from that event back in 2018 there to show people I'm not new to this, I'm true to this. I've been doing this for years,
Right.
and I feel like there's something to say about just how I got super excited, not just on pairing like wine and food in general, but just wine that I never, food with wine that I never experienced in this way. And so being able to host an event at Cafe Rudi then was super cool. Just have the ability to let them like, all right, child, go ahead and, do your thing. Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, why am I not doing this? But I do recognize because back to what we're talking about, folks just don't think that wine goes with their food, or their traditional drink is not this, so that's why it's a shout out for like beers from Africa, because I feel like it's definitely a beer, a lot of regions are more like crazy about the beers that they have. So but yeah, back to the jollof. Judgment of Jollof was a spin-off of me playing up to 2 parts. Judgment of Paris, which was the blind tasting that happened, a competition in Paris, where some American wines were snuck in as entries into an actual wine pairing. They ranked the American wines the highest, and that's why Napa wines are so expensive. They were wines from Napa, and so because they beat out the French wines at the Judgment of Paris. So that is a spinoff of, so it was an homage to like this Judgment of Paris, plus, as you mentioned, the Jollof Wars. So I called it the Judgment of Jollof. And I truly think that having, Jollof side by side and being able to like truly taste them, everyone, depending on what your national, like if you are Nigerian, you have no choice but to say Nigerian jollof is the best. But I think if everyone truly have them next to each other, would be a whole different type of I think it would end the war. I'm willing to figure out how to get sponsors. I'm willing to give the Judgment of Jollof, do a blind tasting of as many jollofs from different regions as possible, and truly have the wines there to pair with them and everything. So you heard it here first. I'm willing to figure out.
Just look for the sponsor. But so like with the Senegalese, you mentioned a Zinfandel. Not
Yes.
the white Zinfandel, but the Zinfandel, because there is a white Zinfandel.
White Zinfandel is just rosé. So yes, no rosé with this one. But yeah.
Right. With the Ghanaian, I'm not going to say it wrong. It's Agiorgitiko from Greece.
Yes, it's difficult, right?
Yeah, I was like, I can't say it. And then with the Nigerian, you recommend Cabernet Franc or Franc from Chenin.
Yes, Cabernet Franc.
Yes.
And I think they all have their unique qualities. Can one wine go with the other? Sure. I don't like with the other style. But I thought it'd be fun to really break down the nuances, the flavors. I think some people don't even know that the different styles of jollof and like this one includes fish, the oil, and this one don't, or this one does. So I think that was like the purpose of me having it too, is how do we break this down further into the context of each style and the recipes and be able to figure out like, oh, okay, this one has more vegetable. This one, okay, I can see why you would pick this wine with this one. So that was where I was leaning into. Some of them are like spicy. So there was something.
I'm a spice girl, so I would probably like.
Oh, good.
It's Nigerian and spicy, so
the Nigerian, the heat level. I had to put that in there. I didn't realize how spicy some of them were. So when I'm eating them, I'm like, bro, this is gonna like kill some people. I could tell, but I'm like, some people may love that, and they just want something like juicy and jammy that's gonna like blend with it instead of like coated and be like. I don't know, like when they say put Riesling with everything that's spicy. I'm like, Riesling cannot be the answer of all ethnic food. This is the word they like to say. Ethnic food paired with Riesling. I'm like, that can't be the answer, bro. Some people really want the spices, and let's just try to find a way where we go behind the spice and figure out what's making it spicy. Peppers, okay. Would wine have a really good pepper element that we can lean into? So Cab Franc has a very nice green paracines in it. So that's the science word for it. But we have this green bell pepper note that we like love. And that's going to go great with this one with the bay leaves, etc. It's like, oh yeah, that sounds like a match made in heaven. I love this. So that's what I'm thinking about when I'm in that section of the book. It's really like breaking down at that level. And then we do have like Chef Pierre, who I love, Senegalese. He's the author of a few Senegalese books, cookbooks. So you get to make your own jollof at home.
We have in here,
and black-owned wine there, the Zinfandel blend of Chaos Theory. So
love it. Oh, I love Chaos Theory. Okay, let me start. Somebody has a question. I want to put Cleta's question in here, but yeah, I do love Chaos Theory. But I have not had it with jollof, so now I need to consider that. Speaking of all the regional differences, I get overwhelmed with all the choices available now. So can you speak a little bit about what to look for on labels that might be appealing? I'm a Merlot woman.
There we go. Come on, Merlot. I think so. Put the question back up. Okay. I think the question is more about when selecting the wine in a store. Speaking of all the regional differences, I don't know if you're getting overwhelmed from the question because there's a lot of wine in general. And if that's the case, knowing that Merlot goes a long way when you're speaking with the cavist, the person selling the wine in a store, or when you're in a restaurant talking to a sommelier. If you say you love Merlot, trust me, there's somebody in there who can say, okay, if you love Merlot, here's a few other wines that you possibly can choose if they don't have one on the menu or in the store. Or if you wanted to venture off, let's say if you don't want to do Merlot today because you always drink Merlot, how about a Malbec? How about a Syrah? How about a Petit Syrah? I feel like there are some places that they can take you on a journey with by selecting other ones. So I feel like start your journey with the conversation with the sommelier with, hey, I'm a fan of Merlot. Do you have any Merlots on the menu that's at this price point? Or just let them just tell you whatever. You don't have to tell you the price point. Just let them identify which ones they have. Or say, if someone likes Merlot, what would you say as an alternative, here? And they should be able to direct you. Let us do our job. That's my point. You don't need to know all those grapes. I feel like
that's a lot.
But I feel like if you want to find another favorite, that's the best way. And every store in every restaurant's going to be different. So there's a lot to say about letting them just do their thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, again, I said we can't go through all of them, so I'm going to skip ahead.
Yep.
I know that you travel throughout Africa, and you do have like a tie to like Kenya and some of those areas in East Africa as well.
Yes.
So that's mentioned in the book as well. But I'm going to skip ahead and go to South Africa because
Okay.
we know that there are a lot of wines that come out of South Africa, and there are some black owned wines and things like that. And that is great advice. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully, I'm doing my job out here.
Yes, but yes, just thinking about, we know the history of South Africa. So for you going there, and you mentioned earlier being able to go reach out and say, hey, I work for the spot, and
Yeah.
I am, looking to come there and learn. What was it that you really found interesting about South Africa, or, even the wines? And like, here's a picture where there's several regions in South
Yes.
Africa of wine.
So, what I love particularly about my visit or my time spent there is the question, or
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
think there was something that was, I guess, to be black in wine. Going to South Africa, there's a connection. The same way when people go, "Oh, I've reached the motherland. I felt like I'm home" or something, right? So to be black and in wine, South Africa gives you that type of feeling for us, for sure. Um, because of both. This is what I do and this is who I see. So the majority of people that we're often, in my case, I lived in Italy, right? So living in Italy, everyone who worked in wine is Italian, and they're
Right,
usually,
right.
they're white, and so we're assumed that that's what wine is about. I do go into a brief history about the colonization of South Africa and also about apartheid during my time there. So there is a lot of, when I'm there, this is how I'm learning the culture.
Mhm.
Immersion is a big part. Like what you said, you learned a lot about me. That made my heart feel great to hear that from which your time that you read the book, because there's no way that I can talk about anybody's wine if I'm not understanding the people. That is what I learned. That's my
Right.
way
Everywhere
of
you went.
wine.
Mm-hmm,
There's
mm-hmm.
a lot of information about wine that you can read online, read in books, and kind of be so removed from the people. Like, you don't have to ever visit Italy or any of these countries to learn about it and actually do well in the industry. My style came from living in a country. And so I learned about wine from being immersed amongst the people. And so, therefore, who makes the wine, who's drinking the wine, and how they enjoy the wine. Um, so I take that on, like, when I was in South Africa, the same way. I'm amongst people who maybe they don't own the winery, but they look like me and they're the winemaker, and that
Right.
they work at the winery. Where so many of us feel like being black or brown, it's like we're so removed from wine because we are black or brown. Where here you're in a place where that's just a normal job for them. Like,
Mm-hmm,
they're like, "Oh,
mm-hmm,
I work as a sommelier because I work at a restaurant." And black people work here, like that's just another
mm-hmm.
job. It's not defined by race, it's
Right.
defined by, I need a job, so I learned about this.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get so passionate about the fact that wine as a white space, I feel like that's where the problem is that white people don't own the space of wine. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yet we have a mindset that that's the case. And so we get like, "Oh my God, you're a sommelier," or "Oh my God, you work in wine and you are a female or a black." But they don't own the space. I think we've given them too much credit,
Right.
or maybe the branding is really good that they are the ones who are, yeah, again, maybe majority of them are in the space, but they don't
Mm-hmm.
own it. You can make wine in Mexico. And
Right.
that's what I talk about in the book. You can make wine, and there is good wine coming out of Mexico by Mexican winemakers. So these
I
people
love
are brown folks making wine, enjoying wine, and having it with tacos. you
it. Right.
know, so let's not think that you can only be, white in order to enjoy this, or from Europe as well. So I feel like that's what was a big part there, was actually seeing black people do different roles. Vineyard managers, those are the folks
Mm-hmm.
that tend to the grapes. So the same way would you get excited if you knew that a black man was running a farm? I don't know. I didn't say
I
owning.
would.
Oh, you would? Okay.
Just because.
I think most people just, okay, black people farm. Of course we farm. We pick cotton, we run
Mhm.
plantations. I feel like people don't think of that as like a like very exciting job for Black people. I think they just look at it as like, oh, okay, we clearly are folks with connection to agriculture and to the land. And so I feel like that was nice to be able to see us in that place. Now, hopefully we're being paid accordingly and all the things. All that checks off. Yeah, everybody's making a good living for themselves and paid appropriately and etc. But I think there's a lot to say about that. Was the biggest thing for me, was to be in a wine country where to be Black wasn't unique, and to be in wine, because everybody, a lot of people, yeah, maybe the owner wasn't Black to all the places that I was going to, but that was something that was, I would say, well, I'll never forget, is having that first experience there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty neat. And in the book, you do list some of the Black-owned wine brands. I'll just name a couple. The House of Mandela, which I didn't realize that Nelson Mandela's daughter has, is founded a wine brand. And then Seven Sisters, because we've heard of Seven Sisters.
Okay.
Recently, I want to say Taraji P. Henson has something with Seven Sisters, I believe.
Yes, actually hers is now too. But of course, that this book was written a year ago. Right. There is a context to, like, the book was finished a year ago. It was written probably 2 years ago. When certain chapters and stuff was done. So there is a lot of more wines that I'm finding out now too. I Best Wines is out as well from South Africa, but the book was completed by time a lot of those wines kind of came to the market, I should say. They probably was working on them, but they weren't available for purchase.
Right. Yeah. That's why I just knew when I heard Seven Sisters, like, I've heard that somewhere. So I think that's the one that Raji has partnered with.
Correct. She has.
So moving on, because you have like Africa, and then we move into the Caribbean. And of course, there are different spaces in the Caribbean. One I want to bring up specifically is Puerto Rico, because, that is a U.S. territory, of course. And there are
people in the back.
And so, and there is a lot of Black history there. And I love the fact that you started the book kind of starting there. Starting with the motherland and some of the places where we would have been, sent to. Correct. Or arrived, whether we wanted to be there or not. But, that our culture is kind of, moving throughout those spaces. Just to talk about Puerto Rico. One thing in the book, yes, it's primarily talking about wine pairings and things like that, but you do also talk about other beverages. So I think that's pretty neat as well, understanding that, it might be like in this case, coquito is something that a lot of people like to have from Puerto Rico, especially around the holidays. Or, well, mojitos are from Cuba, but we're going to Cuba next. So just understanding some of the things that are part of that culture and a part of the things that people are really leaning into.
Yeah, I thought it was important to not, for lack of a better word, wine wash places. If a place is not suitable to grow grapes, that's okay. We're enjoying Rome, and so I thought there was something like this. Wine is part of the culture of other places, adapting it for it to be more diverse for the sake of my book, for the sake of I'm a mixture of cultures. I'm a product of the Middle Passage, and so I feel like there's something about me that where I can go, oh, okay, does this go well with this? Because that is part of my legacy.
Right.
But if somebody is still in said country and they don't know even where to access this Greek wine that I just, that you had mentioned for the pairing, I wanted them to also feel like I see you. Like I understand that culturally, your rum, your recipes for cocktails there is equally just as important. So if this is my way to have a platform, that this is my Beyonce moment and I got the mic and I'm able to tell, I'm going to put people on game to what people are drinking locally. If you happen to visit Puerto Rico, Cuba, etc., because that's part of their local beverage history. And so I didn't want to, again, just wine wash everywhere. I wanted people to be connected to the beverage. Like if you're learning about them from this book, I want you to know what they're drinking there.
Yes, I love that. So it's definitely like a cultural immersion in this book that we're getting. And that's why as I was reading, I was just enjoying reading about the food and the pairing, sitting there getting hungry for one, thinking about other things that I could try, because I don't know, I might not have mentioned it at the beginning, but I am in the Atlanta area, and there are all kinds of like cultural restaurants around here. So I think, okay, if I go to an Ethiopian restaurant, what could I get? What are they eating? What wine could I pair with it if I go to that Ethiopian restaurant? And that is one of the things I've been wanting to try. That's why I mentioned that specifically, or whatever that is, just to understand that. But I want to go to Cuba because number one, you had a very interesting experience of going to Cuba at the time that you went.
Yeah.
Number one, that's number one. Number two, Cuban is known for cigars.
Yes.
I know that there are people who like to go to cigar bars even here in the U.S.
Okay.
And you paired wine and cigars.
You know what's so funny? I remember when I was writing this, because that was not originally part of like what I was writing about Cuba. And I remember looking at the blank paper. It was like something was telling me that I should do something else, but I didn't know what the something else was. So I think I like held Cuba like last in the Caribbean. I kept like, I don't know, it's not done yet. And we mentioned I have a co-author, Layla. She's like, girl, we talked about all the things you said you wanted to say. Like, yeah, there's nothing like you talked about your trip when you spent time in Cuba, or you talked about the dishes. I think we need to move on. And I was like, I think we need to like hold it. Something was going back and forth with me. And I was like, you know what? I finally recognized what it was. And I thought it was a cool addition. And I feel like this is kind of like the nuggets that people will find throughout the book. Like these like little gems that I want to leave for people. I don't think any chapter is the same, for that very reason. We talked about Puerto Rico, like you mentioned, and I talked about my time driving around the island and trying different mofongo from the different places. And pairing wines from the different styles. And so the same thing happens here for the cigars when I visited the cigar factory and had a blast learning about rolling. They let me sit down and I started rolling and understanding how like everything, smelling everything, watching it deconstructed, like before it becomes the cigar. Looking at them stuff the cigar, rolling, which one is not, which ones they throw away, why, the leaves, to wrap him, and I thought that was super unique experience. And I'm, very happy to have had that experience with Dash. She still does tourism in the Caribbean. So I think that was unique. And I'm very fortunate to have had that type of immersion. I don't know if I would have figured out how to do it on my own. So shout out to her for real. Like in Cuba is a lot of laws and rules, and you know somebody.
Yeah, and you do talk about that. That's what just the whole experience is great. And again, y'all get the book so you can learn, because we're not going to tell you.
And that was one of the fun things, learning about cigars as I was writing that portion of the book. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, fuller body cigars and lighter bodies. Like, oh, this is feeling just like how I talk about wine anyway. And so I got like super excited and spent like, now I extended my time in this where we like, oh, we only supposed to do this much time in Caribbean. Now I'm extending the time that I'm writing about it, because I'm like now geeked out about trying to pair wines with different types of cigars is what I understand. So every time I like get into something, I go down a deeper rabbit hole. So people are like, girl, you need to come up for air, And so I was like, this would be nice to just have for all those cigar lovers as well in the book. Just have them know, like, I see you. I understand that not all this wine is not perfect for all cigars. There's different nuances to cigars as well. So,
usually when I see people like having a cigar, it's some type of other types of spirits, not necessarily wine. So that's why I wanted to bring that up, because I know that yes, there are women who smoke cigars. You talk about the cigar ladies there in Cuba and all of that, but I mean here I have friends that will smoke cigars. So understanding that there are ways that you can pair that as well and be able to continue to enjoy the wine.
Yes.
So, of course, there are other places we talk about, like Barbados. I do want to mention Brazil last before we get to the U.S., because believe it or not, we're almost out of time. I want to mention Brazil because some people may know or may not know that outside of Africa, there are more people of African descent in Brazil than anywhere. But ironically, I want to say I probably was in the fourth grade. I did a report on Brazil for school and never knew that there were so many Black people in Brazil until like maybe 5, 6 years ago. So I'm like, okay, how did they whitewash that? But nevertheless,
you said how did I look? You like I wrote a whole report in fourth grade. Why was that not in my research?
how did I not know that there was a whole bunch of like people who look like me in Brazil? So I mean, so that's the thing. But you also had an exciting experience when you went there as well.
Yeah, love Brazil. Probably if it's not like one of my top countries ever to visit, it's definitely top three. Every time I experience it, so there is a lot to say about the culture. When I'm there, I mean, not that I don't feel like home at when I'm in Africa. There's a different type of home that I feel when I'm in Brazil. I think it's because we have this diasporic connection. Like we all come from a transatlantic,
Right.
so there is something like, oh yeah, you my sister and brother for real, like in a different language, etc. So you understand the trauma we both went through it, in a different way. Or let's say we landed in a different language.
Right.
So we may speak a different language, but our stories is very much connected in this way, or our legacy, our ancestry, excuse me. So I feel like there was a lot of connecting that I didn't recognize that I was going to feel when I was there. The way they would treat me, I felt the most connected on like, oh, no one knew. That was probably the best way to say it. Where in Africa, I feel like if I arrived, maybe they would know by the way I dress, by the way I wear my hair, or something like this. Like being Black alone is not enough for people to think that you're African. This is Africa. You're from African descent. So there's other things that they're looking for, like, cues. I feel like when I'm walking around in Brazil, most people think that I could be their cousin, their something like this, right? So there is very much a familial connection that I love, that my heart loves, that I feel when I'm there. I appreciate the fact that most people, no matter how pale their skin are, they will tell you their connection is with Angola. I've never seen so many white passing people call themselves Black in my life. I just literally, it was so shocking where people who are there are some people who are from the Caribbean who look obviously from African descent would say they're not Black. There are people who look pale with blonde hair and green eyes in Brazil and tell you they are Black. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, oh, there's a wrinkle in the matrix now for me because I've never been around your type before, clearly.
Right.
So that was something I was like, oh, okay. When you hear that, it's not so much that I'm happy that this person, associates with being Black, is that they honor in the legacy of their story. Even if they had one grandma who looked like me, and the rest of them could have been lighter, etc. That person still identifies themselves as being culturally and obviously connected. They must have grew up in a household where everybody can still look dark skinned. And so they identify with the fact that one grandma, that one, relative who connects them to, a culture of African people, they fully acknowledge that means that they are Black.
Yeah, they are Black.
They do not need people to spell that out for them. They're not trying to pass as anything else. They understand that they are raised accordingly. And that made me feel safe. That's the important part I want to say. As much as they say it's dangerous in Brazil or wherever, the favelas, etc. And I spent time there as well, part of my trip. I would say that I felt very much like, yeah, you should watch yourself. But I'm from New York City. I mean, you should watch yourself wherever you are.
Exactly. Exactly.
So you should go. I wouldn't go into somebody's projects that I'm not, never grew up or don't know anybody there. So you shouldn't be walking up in people's, a neighborhood that you don't know much about and you don't have nobody guiding you in a foreign language. If you're going to stay in the tourist areas and you want somebody to show you around, etc., like we did, to take you into some more of the neighborhoods, go ahead and do that. Now, would you do that in every country? Yeah, if every country would say, any country that's going to tell me that the crime rate is high because of poverty, et cetera, you should be on a different level of alertness. That does not mean that it's because of race. It's because of the state of the city or the state of the country, et cetera. So I would say that my time there in eating was culturally different. as I go up towards the Caribbean and then down towards Sao Paulo. And it also inspired me to want to learn a language, and which sounds like a weird place to go, but connected culturally to Portugal. And so also being connected to Brazil from my time living in Portugal was truly an honor to still be around the culture in a way. So
That's good. And in Brazil, there is wine in Brazil. They have wine regions. One of the things that I didn't realize is that there is also bubbly or champagne in Brazil as well.
yeah, sparkling wine from Brazil. Champagne's only made in France, but sparkling wines and in Brazil is kind of like the go-to category that they're becoming known for. So again, I in my wine shop, I actually sold a producer that I list, in the book, and really wanted to highlight the idea that, even some of the champagne brands that
Right.
is in France is actually investing in the same area. So it's close to the Uruguay border, so southern Brazil, where for those who don't realize is that the further north you go in Brazil is hotter, and for the south you go is cooler. And just like Champagne, which is the further north section, is the cooler section of France, colder climate, that's where you want to make good sparkling wine. So
Got it. Love that. Love that. And last but not least, we're gonna go a couple minutes over. You good?
go ahead, I'm here.
Okay, because we
Let
we
me
are
take a
in
sip.
the U.S. of A. Good old U.S. of A. Yeah, and I had a heavier pour than you did. You might have already had some before we started. I don't know, but I'm gonna go to the good old U.S. of A.
All right.
And we're gonna start with soul food.
Okay.
And like you have a special take on what soul food really is.
I do. I was like, I do. I mean, I think soul food is very much, I tried to make sure that I include not just the South. I wanted people to understand soul food from, like, as someone from Harlem, like you are from Cleveland, I'm sure your people may have started in the South, but we have our own experience in the different cities and places that we have now migrated to. So I just want to talk about it from that lens. And so I start the soul food conversation from being in Harlem and being influenced by my parents, one whose families come from other southern states, where my father's family from Jacksonville, Florida, by way of Georgia, and my mom from Virginia. They bring that with them to New York. And so that is kind of, the soul food that we have is a context of, again, legacy, but yet we get to have our own spins off things. And I go into kind of the chicken and waffles, which has become obviously very popular. Everyone knows the dish, but I think many people probably don't know the root of it, or that it actually is from Harlem. So it is a dish of mixed, cultures. In that case is one that was birthed, here. And so it's very much soul food. I think you can find it in a lot of places now. But I think there was something that it was special to Harlem, and I wanted to make sure I highlighted that.
Yes, and I love this recipe that you shared from
Melba. Yes.
Eggnog waffles. That looks so good. I'm trying to get the light
Trust
right.
me, shooting it and tasting it at the same time is even better. When you
yes, there was some show that I watched that she was on, and she was talking about the waffles and how she makes them, and the strawberry butter and all of that. But what I like is that you do have, your pairings are a little different in this particular section. It's not just like one particular food, but like kind of things that people would eat. So like breakfast and brunch, you do recommend sparkling wine, which makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's a way that we have more of a communal style dining, and we usually we're not sitting there like, this what's on the plate is it. I would say the same way the soul food, what I eat for Thanksgiving is technically soul food. What I eat for Sunday dinner, I guess if I get lucky, depending on if my mother wants to go like through all of that and cook at her house, that's where we'll have like the true soul food, dishes. And so you'll have like a plethora of different things, whether it's in this case turkey wings, or obviously on Thanksgiving the whole turkey, the candy yams, and none of those flavors I think on its own you would think if somebody was putting I don't know how this all works out, but for some, Thank God. So for some reason, it all tastes good on a plate together.
Right. Right.
And that is something that I recognize was a different way that I should treat soul food, right? So
Mhm.
batch them by the way that we eat it and
That's
when
true.
we eat it. So the dishes that I came up with, like what are typical things you would find, at a cookout, right? Because
Right.
it's a
Right.
mixture of different things. It's not just burgers and franks. Like at a
Mhm.
cookout that is themed around soul food, you
Mm.
will have a bunch of different dishes. Like what's this saying they say? Who made the
Potato salad.
yeah? You're like, this is a thing. This is a thing. Who
Right.
made the salad? And these type of dishes we're expecting to see at a cookout, and
Mm.
so it's almost like they fall short if they don't have certain dishes. Just like I'm sure if you came to somebody's Thanksgiving dinner and they didn't have sweet potato pie, you'd be like, oh, no sweet
Right.
potato pie, like,
What's going on?
yeah, what's going on? Somebody, I must say, no, nobody. Like at this point, go order Patty LaBelle's patty pies. At this point, just make sure we got sweet potato pie.
That's
And
something.
and I really felt like that was something that I really wanted to attribute to truly how we eat, which is more of a selection of a
Right. Yeah, we have
smorgasbord of different.
a
Yeah,
whole plethora, a
yeah. We're not
plethora
sitting there eating
from.
pasta, antipasta. Like we're not waiting for somebody to like course it out. It's
Right.
all there at the same time. With a nice cranberry sauce right on top. If you on top
Right.
of all of that for Thanksgiving. So
Right. So I love that. So you do that for like brunch, breakfast, holiday dinner. Also, you mentioned the cookout. But I did love the part where you mentioned the cookout, like having there was a wine which one is it? That is a wine from Concord, made from Concord
oh yeah,
grape, which
Concord.
would be kind of like having grape soda because we love grape soda.
Yeah. Why not? These are the little nods. I feel like that was the important part of the book. It's kind of is very intimate. The book, me
Mhm.
and the book it was an intimate relationship. I actually poured a Concord wine, or I should say, sold a Concord wine at my wine shop. Soda on a can. It's by Todd Cavallo is the winemaker. He is from Syracuse, New York. He's making wine in Hudson Valley, New York, and he made these cans of Concord wines,
Oh, wow.
and the way they sold was crazy. I was like,
It's so
I
long.
would
The
think
kids
that
don't get to it. Be like, oh, grape. Oh, that's not grape juice. That's
it
not
was
grape.
so good. He's a great winemaker. So I think that if somebody was thinking about Concord wine from back in the day where it was like just sugary and this is a really good winemaker making and then taking a grape that folks is not expecting for it to be considered, I don't know, elevated to go with food or etc. Right? They just want it. They're like, okay, that's going to be like cheap or whatever, but he's making it in a really high quality way, right? So it's almost that high and low moment happening. And so and then put it in a can instead of putting it in a bottle, obviously also makes it very accessible. So that was something I was like, okay, this is the one that people are going to just drink and enjoy. And we're not thinking about the parent. We're just having that grape soda moment,
Right.
without at our cookout. So yeah, that was
Right.
definitely an homage to a real wine that I enjoy in the summer and clearly most of my customers too at the
Right.
store. So that was great.
All right. Well, because I don't want to be here all night, because we could talk all night. Just two more I just want to talk about
Yeah,
real
no worries.
quickly. Low country, because we both have some roots in the low country.
Yeah. So
My
Low Country was
mom,
truly inspired, like I mentioned, about the fact that I felt more connected to the Low Country after the time I worked in Charleston. I've never spent time in Low Country before. I don't know if I mentioned in the book, but I did take my certified sommelier exam there, and you fly in for the exam and then you like leave. There's no other like reason for me to stay, etc. I did have family that I was able to spend time with there, but most of my family, even if they live in Atlanta or California, they spend so much time in New York. We don't got to go see them.
right.
They come
Right.
to New York often enough. So to be honest, it is a little bit different when you have family in all these places, but they all come back to New York, so you don't get to see them. So it was nice to be able to actually take the test there. and passed the test there. For those who don't know, the Court of the Masters of Sommeliers is 4 different levels, and certified is the second level of it. And then there's 2 more: advanced sommelier, and then, or advanced certified, and then master sommelier. And so to take that exam, very difficult. A lot of people talk about and pass on the first try of taking it. Yeah, it felt very like, like a homecoming, very spiritual for me as well. So years later, being able to connect through my clients, which is Charleston Wine and Food Festival, and coming back as the food, as the wine and beverage head of beverage, it was very much a great example of a full circle moment. I passed the exam there, and now here I am taking on this very like larger than life role of being in charge of the wine program there. So I do talk about it in the barbecue section as well of the book, but that was the closest amount of time that I ever spent, because I would come like once a month to Charleston from 2021 to basically like 2023, 2022.
Oh, wow.
So I was spending quite some time there, which was pretty cool to get to know. Again, here I am the same way. And good thing I spent so much time out the country, because the same way I was falling in love with places like South Africa, Chile, all these other places that I talk about in the book that I visited or even relocated to, Portugal, etc. I started realizing when you come back home, now you love home, or you see home differently. My home was New York. But when I traveled to these other states, I was exploring them the same way I would if I was in Italy, the same way if I was going to a new country. So that was the cool part too, because I had a different lens on. I wasn't just there for work. I was like, oh, how can I learn more about oysters and get into kind of the food scene there, and why is it so different, and why is everybody wearing pastel pink in December? I'm like, dude, everybody knows it's about to be winter. Why be in pink? So but you start learning more about the history and the culture, and the wine history was something that was very unique and connected for me as someone who spent time in Portugal and learned about the ships that would transport over Madeira wine, as well as other things, clearly, to the Low Country. And so there was like a unique connection there that I was able to dive into. And I even hosted a wine pairing dinner in Charleston at Husk, a restaurant with I did a Madeira dinner at Husk, which was pretty cool.
I love that. And speaking of Madeira, you like one of the things that you have in here, a Verdejo Madeira, to put that with peach cobbler. So I love that.
Get into it.
I never thought of that. Well, wine and cobbler. One of my favorite things from one time that I lived down that way for about 12 years was Low Country boil, also known as a frogmore stew, which is like your shrimp, your potatoes, your corn, and the sauce, smoked sausage. But there's a Cinsault rosé with that, and then shrimp and grits, which a lot of us love shrimp and grits. Yeah. We pair rosé with that as well. So.
Yeah, shrimp is easy. There's the grits part, right? You do have the texture. So there's like a nice way to like challenge someone. Like if you just had like a shrimp, dish, and in this case you having it on top of the grits, and the buttery, like you're like, oh, okay. Rosé, most people have is like the lighter style, etc. I wanted to go with a more full body, more higher in alcohol rosé that can really hold up to it, which I feel like most people don't think of rosés in this way. They think of just like sitting on a yacht and kind of like, enjoying the summer. But rosé is very much a all year wine. If you have the right dish, people eating shrimp and grits, I'm sure all year long. Yep. So I feel like they may be a good reason for people to buy some rosé in December, because they're having maybe shrimp and grits. So it needs a little bit more love, I feel like, all season.
Right. And I got some rosé in there. So thank you for saying that, because in my head, it was something for the summer. So see, I'm learning. Yes. I am learning.
Yes.
And I'm not going to go into the Creole just because we're running short of time, but I do want to talk about barbecue, because you already kind of mentioned it. And then when we were talking about uncorked, you were talking about how the young man was with his dad and they had the
The
barbecue
barbecue restaurant.
restaurant. But I knew that there were different styles of barbecue, but you really kind of lean into that in the book that, like there's a barbecue belt that runs from Alabama over to Texas, and, some places are more well known for it or whatever. But it's all, even though it's barbecue, it could be different
Cuts.
protein,
Yeah.
and it can be different. The ways that they are prepared are different.
Yeah.
So the
That was
one is
something that was cool for me too, as someone who truly do not eat a lot of let's just say I don't eat red meat. So it is something interesting for me when I am talking about pairings with food that I don't eat, that's not in my part of my diet. And I feel like that is super cool for me to be able to talk about this, because I don't explain that in the book, but I do mention it in the soul food chapter.
right.
And I thought that was like, I don't want to leave out dishes that are very, important to our culture. Even there's some pairings for chitlins in there somewhere. I think
I
there
missed
is
that one because I was thinking that before I read the book. I wonder she got chitlins in here. I have to go back and look at that.
chitlins and rosé. I'm sure that should be a good match. Because it's so salty and vinegary.
Yeah,
Like,
I haven't had them in so long. So
yeah. But I don't eat it, right? So I feel like this. I don't eat
no.
pork. I don't eat red meat. So there's a lot of context that I have to know about the dish. Like, how is it prepared? What is it seasoned with? For me to understand, I'm not really the same preparation that you're doing to the chitlins. If you did it to a pickle, I should be able to understand what it's going to taste like. I understand I may not understand the like how the meat feel and all this other stuff, but I want the seasoning and how, if you did it to a mushroom, like what is it going to taste like, So when I think about barbecue and brisket, I got to understand like what cut of meat is it? Is it dark, or what style of meat? How the texture of it? How, like, all of that plays a large role in when I'm actually trying to dissect a pairing that I can't actually have.
Mm.
Sometimes I have really nice chefs, and they'll help me by actually leaving the brine out for me, so I can be able to have it before it get any type of influence, or they'll put together a mixture for me. And I hope that that they don't do this often enough, but I'm saying I hope there's a lot more folks, because now, right, I'm sure there's Psalms who are vegan, and so
Right.
they don't eat half the things I eat,
Right. Right.
But so me not having the ability to eat, red meat and pork, that's small compared to someone that's a Psalm that's vegan. I'm sure they're still doing a job at whatever restaurant they can. They don't just go work at vegan restaurants. But there is a lot to say about that. Is something, I just want to throw that out there for that barbecue section. That was probably more of a challenge for people,
Okay.
knowing that I am, but I hope they see that I am thinking from a higher level. If it's
Right.
chicken wings and it's in Texas versus chicken wings in Lexington, North Carolina, there is going to be a different type of sauce that we're expecting, right? And so, or style, or even when I talked about the white sauce of Alabama for barbecue, right? So there is
Like, white sauce. I never even heard of that.
Yeah,
I'm in Georgia, right next door. Never heard of white sauce for barbecue.
yeah. Oh, see, it's all about how do we understand each other as well. So that's something that, at least if you go to Alabama, that's something you look for. You like, take me to a barbecue spot, I want to try that white sauce.
Right.
It's I think there is a cool part I hope that people get from the book too. That's talking about US. We're now learning about each other, and we right here. We got to go all the way to Brazil. You can
Right.
explore locally and have some context about. But yeah, I love a good barbecue pairing. People love barbecue, so I was excited to
barbecue.
have
People definitely do.
Ronnie Scott's. He's the king of barbecue in my mind, right? So I feel like having his recipe in the book, I felt very fortunate in his barbecue sauce. That was, all these are recipes that are mostly adapted from books that are already published. But if people don't know who they are, they're in for a treat. These are like people who are the top of their craft, of their cuisine, to be able to ask them to contribute something from their culture, was very much, me sending love back out. Like, if you into barbecue and you know about barbecue, you know who this man is,
Right.
And if you don't know about it and you don't know who he is, you in for a treat, because you're about to, make this recipe, and it's going to be the best barbecue sauce you probably ever made. So that was something that was really cool for me too. And I did that for every chapter, whether it was, the Ethiopian, Somalian, everybody is these are recipes not from, I didn't realize some people thought these were my recipes. I'm like, no. These are recipes, and it tells you what book they're adapted from people who are specialists in those cuisines. So, yeah, you don't ever got to buy their book to support them. Hopefully that's what it tells you to buy their book
if you want to learn more.
Yeah, if you want to learn more. So, and support these other, black cooks and mixologists as well in here as well.
Right. But thank you so much for that. Yes, I wanted to put that comment back. I'm learning so much. I'm looking forward to reading and experiencing this book. Yes. And even in the amount of time we've been here, we didn't cover not even the half. There is so much in here. Cha does a really good job of telling stories. You've heard bits and pieces of how she's traveled, her experiences, the people that she's met, the food that she's eaten and not eaten. We just found out. And,
all right, I don't talk too much about this, okay? But I
but other types of pairings, whether it's what people are having with a beer. Like, I'm just thinking, we didn't talk about Jamaica, but say, hey, maybe there's a Jamaican beer, or rum in certain places, or tequila in certain places. I love the fact that you incorporate all of it, not just the wine. So again, the book is actually out in a couple of weeks. Yeah, a couple of weeks now on the 4th of November. So hopefully this has whet your appetite for some wine.
Yes.
As well as just to learn more about, wine pairing for the people, for your holidays, for your everyday. If you have people in your life that love wine, this would be a good book to, maybe a good holiday gift, and all those sorts of things. So I know that, you're going to be on a whirlwind tour. You now sit on your Instagram earlier today, but just share a little bit with us about where you're going, or are you coming to Atlanta? I had to ask that.
Yeah, I want to get there. So I'm gonna bring me there, Atlanta. Tell me that you got the connections. I'm looking for the connect. I need the Atlanta connect. But I am starting here in New York, doing an event in Brooklyn with a new Black woman-owned wine bar and bookstore. So I'm super excited it's called Gladys. I haven't announced, so you get the sneak peek because you get to know exactly where I'm going. See,
yes, I just started.
I only saw the cities. Yeah, so we started in Brooklyn. We're doing a really cool book talk in the beginning, and the wine bar is downstairs. So we're gonna do a pop-up wine bar afterwards to kind of vibe afterwards. So that's gonna be cool. Then we're gonna head to San Diego. From San Diego, I'm there for the San Diego Food and Wine Festival. From San Diego, we're going to head to DC, and there I'm going to a bookstore and put together dinner. From DC to Virginia. I'm doing the 2 Up, 2 Down, another wine festival that celebrates Virginia wines. And from Virginia to Boston, and Boston's jam-packed with book signings at bookstores, the Museum of African American History. We're also doing a dinner at Comfort Kitchen. So I'm super excited about working with a chef at that location too. And then to Charlotte and doing a full workshop in Charlotte with wines and pairings. And it's going to be a blast there. And lastly, back home to Harlem and doing something amazing with a guest speaker. So it's gonna be a good time. So it's a full 30 days. Oh, wow. And we're already talking about where we're going next in other cities post that, but I'm locked in for the 30 days. And then we can kind of pick up post Christmas or something like that. But I'll be local to Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, the tri-state area around the holiday season, and then pick back up in January. So so be on the lookout. If I didn't say a city, look, let Marcy know, hey, tell Cha to come here. We want to do something. Right. I'll be more than happy to come to a different city in 2026.
Yes, as you were talking, and I was thinking of Atlanta, and that your Harlem guy, Marcus Samuelson, has a restaurant in Atlanta.
So everybody go on Instagram and go tell Marcus Samuelson and send me to Atlanta to do that event. I'll put my bag tomorrow.
Yes, because he has the restaurant there, Red Rooster.
Red Rooster's here in Harlem. Is it called Red
Right.
Rooster?
Yeah, he has Red Rooster in Harlem.
Oh,
But
okay.
he has the restaurant here, and of course, right now it's not going to come to me. But he does have a restaurant here in
Yeah, he
Atlanta.
has a few different names, so different concepts.
Yes.
So,
I went to for
and he
my
did, because you
birthday.
said that. Let's read his blurb. Is on the back of the book. Cha McCoy's wine pairing for the people is a game changer, breaking barriers, challenging traditions, and making wine pairing accessible to all. Her expertise and passion shines throughout the book, inviting everyone to the table to sip, savor, and celebrate. That is the quote from Marcus Samuelson, right on the book.
Okay. Oh, yes. Called Marcus Bar and Grill. How did I forget that?
There we go.
I actually went there for my birthday about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So, but I'm like, yeah, because he's Ethiopian. That would be like perfect. So I'm throwing it out there, and so hey,
Everybody tag him. Bring Cha to Atlanta.
yes, that would be a perfect pairing for a lot of reasons. So, but thank you so much for being here. Thank you for
having me.
We went way over time today, but it's worth it. This has been a joyous conversation. I look forward, and I think I might have said this is a Pinot Noir that I'm drinking.
Yeah, you said from McBride Sisters.
Yeah, it is McBride Sisters. That's what it looks like. So it is the Reserve Pinot Noir 2019. So actually, this is from New Zealand. So that's what I'm drinking today. It is a black-owned wine. If you're not familiar with the McBride Sisters, they also do.
And one sister is from New Zealand, so that's why they make the wine in New Zealand as well as California from the other side. Robin.
Yes, and they also do the Black Girl Magic, and so people might be more familiar with those. But yes, so black-owned wine, a Black sister. We are Black Girl Magic right here in this moment. So thank you so much again for being here. Thank you for everyone who watched live and had questions or comments. Thank you to everyone who catches this in a replay. Go ahead. I did throw this up here, but I'm going to throw it back. If you haven't bought the book yet and need a place to buy it, there is a Brown Girl Collective bookstore, which is actually a part of Bookshop. And this book is prominently featured at the top of the page. So if you haven't pre-ordered yet, those pre-orders are very important. So if you haven't done that yet, wherever your favorite bookseller is, please go ahead and do that. Looks like we have one more comment. And she's like, hey, thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to let you, well, actually, we can just say goodnight because I don't have an announcement right now.
Yeah, that's it. Follow me on tour. All of my information is there. So follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn. And keep up with the ticket links, I should say, for the events. It's going to be on my website, so chamccoy.com. So that is where you'll find if you want to see where I'm at and all the things. All the exact links, so all the events will be posted there.
Perfect. So I'm going to say good night to everyone. You don't hang up, though, Cha.
No problem.
We'll hang up on everybody else. But it's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and I look forward to seeing you when you come to Atlanta. And to everyone else, be on the lookout for more upcoming great authors and books and specialists and things like that that will be coming up Monday and beyond, going through the end of the year. So thanks for your time, and we look for somebody has another comment. What's that? Oh, I don't know what's going on. Oh, okay, that's just something for me. Thank you, Cleta, for letting me know. Appreciate that. But yes, I look forward to seeing you all again here real soon, and you all take good care and get some good wine. Get some good wine.
Cheers.
All right. Bye-bye.